Okay, breaking the spell. That's what it is, really. It's like a spell has been cast on the human mind to disconnect us from the full magnitude of who we are. And great news is the people in control of breaking that spell is us. Not some external force, us. It's just a choice. A choice. We've had this schism energy, which has created this imbalance, it seems to me, more and more, which has manifested itself out into this reality, and it's made it more difficult for us to remember who we are and the nature of who we are. But we're now in a time, a wonderful time, when balance is returning. As a result of the schism, we've gone from how we used to be, connected to all that is, and we've had this spell cast on the human mind. But now the schism is coming to an end, and you can see that it's coming to an end in the mass awakening that's happening around the world now, where people are starting to wake up to things that they would never have even looked at before. And suddenly it's not becoming weird and bizarre anymore, it's becoming, hey, this feels right to me, because they're becoming more conscious and more aware of the full enormity of existence, and not the little me, what can I do, box that people have been living in and encouraged to be living in. The biggest box is fear. You know, this schism energy, because it's so imbalanced and disharmonious, one of the major ways that it manifests is fear. And when you become more conscious, and one of the great ways to do it, because I'm not sitting on a bloody cross-legged on a mountain saying, hey, I'm the guru. I'm going through this process as well. My own journey and what I'm putting out are absolutely parallel, and one is fundamentally connected to the other. So I'm going through this process as well. And what you find is, if you can get to a point, and it's amazing, it sounds really difficult, but when you start doing it, it's not so difficult. If you get to a point where you can remove yourself, and instead of being your thoughts, just observe your thoughts. You know, I'm always laughing at myself now. I'm thinking, oh God, the mind's off again. Look at it. And you observe it, and you observe the reactions of the mind through thought to different situations, and it can be funny because it's basically stupid compared with consciousness. And when you do that, you start to observe your thoughts and you start to observe your emotions. Something very fundamental comes out of that. Hold on a second. If I'm observing my thoughts and I'm observing my emotions, what's doing the observing? What's doing the observing? Consciousness. And like it's that line earlier in the day, something about an intellectual is someone whose mind is watching itself, basically. Well, as I said at the time, consciousness, or a conscious person, is someone whose consciousness is watching its mind, and is aware that the mind is not who it is. And that starts to bring you in a completely different point of observing the world. Instead of being sort of in the world and caught in it, you're now on the top of the hill and you're seeing it from a completely different perspective. And things that used to wind you up and make you angry and make you frustrated and all these things that pull us into the schism energy, stress and all the rest of it, once you start observing your mind, it doesn't do that anymore. Because what you're observing is not you, and you realize that. And the more you do it, the more the mind starts to come in line with consciousness. And in the term of a friend of mine in South Africa, the consciousness conscientizes mind, and the two work together. Because the mind ceases to be the fractured schism view of reality and starts to come in line with consciousness. And at that time, mind is a wonderful thing, because it's that interface that allows consciousness to experience this reality. And when they're working together, mind is serving consciousness, then you've got everything you need. And letting go of fear is the key thing. And when you get to that point where you're observing your mind and you're observing your emotions instead of being them, it's amazing how fear, and I can only talk for myself and talking to other people who've been through it, fear starts to leave you. Because what is there to fear when you've reached that point, not only of realization, but of observing the world from a point of view of that which is always has been, always will be, infinite consciousness, eternal consciousness, which is what we are. The other thing that it holds us in servitude is insecurity. How many people always put a mask to the world? It's not who they really are. It's what they think other people think they should be. So instead of putting ourselves to the world, we put this mask to the world that we think is acceptable to the world. Consciousness does not do insecurity, and it certainly doesn't do putting masks on to fulfill other people's perceptions of what you should be. Consciousness is all possibility. It is all potential. You know, people think about, one consciousness, and they think, oh, that means, yeah, I'm one consciousness, yeah, I'm one consciousness, I'm one consciousness. If it's some clone-like state. Consciousness, in the form that I'm talking about, at the infinite level of us, is all possibility. Therefore, when we celebrate our uniqueness and celebrate our diversity and celebrate the diversity and uniqueness of each other, we are celebrating the fact that we are infinite consciousness, because we're celebrating all possibility. What happens is when we get caught in mind, that's when you get the clone. Yeah, I'm mind. Yeah, I'm mind. Yes, I'm mind. All the bloody clones line up, all look the same and all the rest of it, and speak the same and think the same. That's mind. So, celebrating uniqueness and being conscious are the same things. And that's why if you look, the more mind has taken over, the more this earth has become more and more uniform. And as we become more and more conscious, we will be celebrating diversity, and diversity will start to return in the way we live our lives. The key thing to breaking the spell is breaking out of belief systems. It's a good question. What would consciousness do? How would consciousness see this? Well, like I said earlier, consciousness doesn't do religion. Because religion is a mind phenomenon that sees everything in terms of apartness and rules and regulations and all the rest of it. Consciousness doesn't do that. So religion's out. If we are going to be conscious, then religion's gone. Politics, well, consciousness vote? I mean, what's going on? Consciousness doesn't do belief systems like politics, so that's gone, that belief system. Race, it doesn't do race. You know, the human form is just a vehicle for consciousness to experience this reality. It doesn't do my genetic spacesuit is better than yours, and because yours is a different color or comes from a different background, I'm better than you, and I'm the master race, or I'm the chosen race, and all the rest of it. Consciousness doesn't do that. Mind does that. When we think in those terms, we're in mind, not consciousness. And self-identity. If we have a self-identity that says, I am my body, and I am my name, and that is me, that is who I am, we're in mind. When we say my name and my body and my life is my experience, the experience of my consciousness, then we're recognizing who we really are, which is consciousness having an experience. And when we break out of these belief systems, which are often related to insecurity, because it's like you want to belong to a group because you feel more secure, or you want to have a belief system because, oh no, I found out what I believe now and I can leave that alone and get on with my life and all that stuff. But when the people used to come around my house as a kid and used to say to me, Mother, what religion are you? She said, we're Christian. No, we're not. No, we weren't. But it was something that, oh yeah, I'll be a Christian because then I've got to be something. Well, we haven't. We can be all that is, has been, and ever will be. We don't have to be a Christian. We don't have to be a Muslim. We don't have to be a Jew. We don't have to be a Hindu or any of the bloody prisons of the mind. We can be all that is. And it's a thing that I say sometimes. If people can tell me what they believe, if they can give a name to what they believe, they're in a prison. Because we just are. Everything just is. It's not just, I think, therefore I am, computer level, or I compute, therefore I am. It's I am, therefore I am. That's the real level of being. I am all that is, has been, and ever will be. I do not need to put a name to what I believe, because I just am. I am the force with no name and all names. I am all things and I'm no things. I'm everything and nothing. I'm everywhere and nowhere. because I am all that is, therefore I'm all possibility. And when we do that, these neurons, pathways and networks stop firing off in relation to the rigid belief system and filtering reality for us. So now we can open to all possibility instead of being stuck with one or two possibilities called belief systems, which hold us in servitude and limitation for entire lives in these vibrational boxes that therefore come from these belief systems. We can be honest with ourselves as we break out of these belief systems. Crucial. Cognitive dissonance is not a bad thing. It's the way it's used that puts us in a state of enslavement because of it. If we are honest with ourselves, people that have belief systems of various kinds, who say, when I come into contact with experience or information that challenges my belief system, I'm not going to hold on till my knuckles turn white. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to look at this, and if it makes sense, I'm going to change the way I see the world. Cognitive dissonance then is a positive thing, and we move on. You know, people get embarrassed because they believe something, and then suddenly realize that it's actually a nonsense. But they shouldn't get embarrassed, because we live in a world where from cradle to grave we are pummeled with manipulation to believe things and take on belief systems that allow the few to control the many. Instead of being embarrassed when we suss it, we should be celebrating that we've sussed it, because we're no longer in servitude. And we can break out of these schizophrenias where, according to Doublethink and Orwell, we take on these contradictory views like war is peace and all the rest of it. Again, honesty, and say, hold on, that doesn't make sense. Because go back to consciousness. Does consciousness do war? No, consciousness does peace in its pure state. Therefore, anything that is being justified for war and slaughter and pain and suffering is by definition unsupportable. So instead of saying, well, we have a war and I'm going to explain it away because I'm fighting for peace, rubbish. War, end of story, no, unjustifiable, and therefore I'm not going to justify it under any means. Then the schizophrenias start to fall. We're not justifying the unjustifiable anymore. We're saying it's not justified, no longer has my support. And now the schizophrenia is breaking because we're no longer supporting two contradictory things. We're taking a point of view of consciousness, peace, love, caring, empathy, compassion, and anything that is contradictory to that, we're not interested in. The schizophrenia starts to break up. And all these things are breaking down it's like a web that we're caught in. The strands pulled off as we start to break down the contradictions of being honest with ourselves in terms of our belief system. And we move from consciousness or to consciousness from mind, crucially. Because if we can connect with consciousness while in this reality, we bring that awareness and that energy into this reality and we start to change it. The energy itself, as we become conscious, it's not just becoming conscious, it's actually an energy. And when we start to be vehicles for it, we start literally to change the energy of this reality and we start to affect other people. You know, it's funny, when I was in that ayahuasca state, and this voice was talking to me, it was explaining to me that actually voice-to-ear communication is not the prime level of communication, although we think it is. And it showed me this picture, and I walked onto a stage like this, and I stood there and never said a word. I was looking at this as this was going on, never said anything. And then two people in the front, I saw it from this back angle, two ladies in this ayahuasca state, one elbowed the other and pointed at me and said, "What the bloody hell's going on?" I was standing there not speaking. And the voice said to me, "You only speak because if you didn't, the audience would ask, when the hell is he going to start?" Because what point it was making was the biggest communication between people in situations like this, both ways, not just one way, and between people, and in general conversation and interaction is not actually voice to ear. That's kind of left brain mind stuff. The real connection is through the energy that we exude. And when we start to become conscious, we become vehicles for a very different energy to the one that we've been used to. And things start to change in a way that just spontaneously change. You can walk past someone in the supermarket, and if you're vibrating to this new energy, then you start to affect them. They start to feel differently, and they'll never say it was that bloke or that lady I passed when I was getting a tin of beans, but they'll just start to feel different because energetically we have been affected. And this is what's happening at this time. The energy of this reality is changing, and those that are tuning to it are becoming very, very different people. And this is the key. As Albert Einstein said, it's a wonderful line. You cannot solve problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. And that's what we've been trying to do in this schism reality, is we've been creating problems by a certain perception and attitude to life and perception of life. And then when we've created those problems with the same perceptions, we've come and tried to solve the problems. No way. We have to move to another level of consciousness, and then this world can change. If we don't, it cannot. He also said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Something else that the human race has become absolutely brilliant at. And that's why we go round and round and round, generation after generation, in the same basic state of conflict and war and all the stuff. Not most people, but the world in general. And only by going to another level of consciousness and bringing that awareness into this reality can this reality change. If we don't do that, it can't change. And the idea of the conspiracy is to put people in a box to keep them from becoming that consciousness, not least by kidding them that they're not that consciousness and they're just their body. And it's not that these manipulators, reptilian or Illuminati in human form, are actually more powerful or anything than we are. They're not. They're in a box too. They're in a vibrational box because anyone that wishes to have power over others, anyone that can do things to people and have no empathy for the consequences, is themselves in a tiny box of perception. What the Illuminati and what the manipulators have done, and they've done it brilliantly, I have to say, because they may not be wise, but they are clever on an intellectual level. Cleverness without wisdom is the most destructive force on earth. That's why we are in such a state that we're in. You know, it's very clever to know how to build an atomic bomb, but it's not wise to do so. There is a difference between cleverness and wisdom. But on an intellectual level, they're very clever. And what they've done is manipulate humanity through the suppression of knowledge and these other means into a smaller box than they're in. But we have the potential to get out of the box. Well, they have the potential too, but far less potential because they're so caught in this mentality that they're in of control. And what is control? Control is massive, massive insecurity. That's what these people are, the Illuminati and these reptilian entities and all the rest. They are consumed by insecurity and fear themselves. That's why they know how to manipulate fear and insecurity so well, because they're connected to it so powerfully. People who are insecure want to control everything because they're not secure enough within themselves just to go with the flow of life and see where it goes. Secure people don't need control over other people. Insecure people do. And I use this analogy a lot because it really kind of encapsulates it for me. Our natural state is not what we have been experiencing in known human history anyway. Our natural state is where we're going, and more people are opening up to. And I use this analogy like the natural state of a ball is floating on the top of the water, floating on the top of the tank or whatever. To keep it in an unnatural state, you have to push it down to the bottom of the water. However, you can't let it go. You have to constantly hold it there. And that's why, as I've been describing today, and I could describe a lot more, we have been subjected to multi-levels of suppression and manipulation from the things we eat, the electromagnetic fields we come into contact with, the way that we're manipulated through words, etc., and religion and belief systems. All those things are necessary to hold us in an unnatural state of being unconscious. And why are all those things necessary? Because we are amazing, infinite, eternal genius. And we've been held in this unnatural state. But, like I say, if you're going to hold the ball in the unnatural state, you've got to hold it there. Because the moment you let it go, woof, it's in its natural state, because that's where it will gravitate to immediately. And the moment we throw off the chains and the shackles of this manipulation and of this misunderstanding of who we are and where we are, then as we break those chains, those vibrational chains, we are going to become conscious by definition, because that's what we are. You know, people think, I've got to seek enlightenment. No. We are enlightened. That's our natural state. The unnatural state is what we've been put into, and therefore we don't have to seek enlightenment. We have to remove the vibrational barriers and belief systems that have held us in a state of unenlightenment. It's not about seeking it, it's about removing what is stopping us being what we already are. Escaping the box. Escaping the box. Oh, it's hard to escape the box. No, it's just moving your point of observation. What we're told to believe is to look in the mirror and say the reflection is me. No. The energy is you. The reflection is the vehicle your consciousness is using to experience this reality. And we look at everything in these terms here, down the microscope. In little me, when we just move that point of observation, and that is everything. Everything comes from that. Everything changes from that. If we can just move our self-identity from I am this person in the body with this name to I am all consciousness, having an experience of this name and this vehicle to experience this reality, everything changes. We go from this to this. Everything comes from that. I can tell you that because I've experienced it. Everything comes from that because there's an energetic move, a shift that takes place when we move from little me to all that is. And that energetic shift changes everything. Your life changes. It has to, because you're not what you were before energetically. We need to move from I am the reflection in the mirror to I am consciousness, having an experience of seeing my reflection in the mirror. And once you start to do that, no way that we can be sheeple anymore. Consciousness doesn't do sheep, human sheep. And it's amazing, you know, when you look at this, I've seen it. You got hundreds and hundreds of sheep, and they can be controlled by a sheepdog, fear, and by one or two, sometimes one shepherd's symbol of authority. And yet, if each one of those sheep expressed its uniqueness and went off in its own unique direction, the symbol of authority and the symbol of fear would be absolutely impotent in controlling those sheep. Those sheep do it because they acquiesce. When we need to cease to acquiesce, and then these people in dark suits and those that control us will have no power over us. And celebrate. We should all celebrate, and we should celebrate each other's uniqueness and ability to be different. They have this saying, it's a national saying in Japan, don't be the nail that stands out above the rest because that's the first one to get hit. Okay, I spent 20 years being hit. Here I am. Eh? It's not as difficult. It's not as difficult. See, so many things. You know, when I was a footballer, the worst part of being a footballer, because I was a nervous little fella then, was sitting in the dressing room before the game, because all the things that could go wrong were going wrong through your mind. And then when you get out in the field and you actually did it, oh, this is good, I'm enjoying this. It's like when you sit worrying about going to the dentist for like 3 weeks. And then you go in and they says, oh, nothing wrong, it's okay. Oh, that's good, that was brilliant. What do you mean it was brilliant? You ruined your life for 3 weeks waiting for this. Everything seems worse thinking about it. I'll tell you from experience, speaking your truth, being your uniqueness is not as difficult as it seems if you disconnect from caring what other people think. That's the prison. That's the prison. Most people live in a prison of fearing what other people think. Therefore, they don't live their life. They live someone else's version of what they should be. Bugger that for a lark. Don't want to know, thank you. I am me. I am unique. And I celebrate everyone else who's expressing their uniqueness. Even though I might not agree with it, so what? Doesn't matter. Their uniqueness, it's them. That's who they are. The more we celebrate uniqueness, the more we celebrate being conscious. As this great film, Dead Poets Society, Robin Williams, he said at one point, I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. You see, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Well, come and see for yourselves. And we have been manipulated to live lives that basically see life from the same point of observation. Because that's what the manipulators want, because then if we do that, we're controllable. Once we start celebrating uniqueness and have infinite numbers of points of observation of the same thing, suddenly there's too many points of difference, too many points of uniqueness and diversity, and you can't control that from a central point. When we open to consciousness, everything seems different because we become different and we lose these prisons like fear and insecurity, and the auric field opens, the mind opens to consciousness, and we start to live a life that is the real us and not the fake us that we have lived up to this point. One of the great things is clearing our minds of the clutter. Always going on clearing the minds of the clutter. When about 2 years ago now, when I was going through this, started this big kind of awakening within myself, like another level, I had this overwhelming feeling for months just to throw everything out. I only live in a little flat because I want to and I like it and it just suits me, but it was still full of rubbish in closets and bloody things, places you do. You don't believe the number of things you kind of accumulate. And what I was going through was an inner clearing of everything out. What really matters to me? What is relevant? And so much isn't. Doesn't matter. We hold things on within ourselves that don't matter and we get stressed about them. And what I did as this was happening to me, I realized after a while that my sudden obsession, which lasted about a month or so, I was going to the bloody recycling tip day after day after day. They're saying, it's you again. Yeah, more stuff, more stuff. And I got down in my flat to only, not minimalism, but virtually there. And I'd cleared all these things. Oh, I'll keep that. I might need it. Well, I never use it. Get rid of it. And then I went, after that I stopped because I had nothing else to throw out. I went through a process, and I'm quite a clean fella, but I'm not obsessed with it. But I wanted to clean everything, cleaning everything constantly. And what I realized that was doing is I was externalizing what was happening within me, and it was such a wonderful experience to clear out external expression of it, but the inner clutter to start to realize what really matters, and you start to realize it so much that winds us up and diverts us and pulls us into mind and stress doesn't matter. I have this thing now. I say to people, if you were on your deathbed and had 10 minutes to live, would what's stressing you now matter? Well, no. Well, the great trick is bring that here into the now and don't let it matter now. Oh, well, what she said about me, it was disgusting. Doesn't matter. She'll say something else tomorrow. What does it matter? How dare you say this about me? Oh, and it's terrible what they're doing, and all this stuff. It doesn't matter. All it matters is we are consciousness having an experience. And we know that we're consciousness having an experience. Does it matter? Does what, Ethel say about me matter to consciousness? Oh, I'm all that is, has been and never will be, and I'm really hurt at what you've just said. I mean, please. Mind cares. Because mind is the village idiot compared with consciousness in the state that mind has descended into. And taking responsibility is taking power back. So often we want to externalize things that are happening in our lives to other people. You know why I'm in this state? It's what that woman did to me in 1963. I've never forgotten. It's all your fault. You're the reason I'm in this state. And then you realize that actually we are expressing an energetic, vibrational version of us all the time. It's called vibes. And if we could get into a real deep level of it, we'd realize what I call this magnetic attraction is actually creating our reality all the time. The manipulators know that. If they can bring you into certain states of being, certain states of stress, certain states of fear, they know that by doing that, you are going to generate the vibrational frequency of those emotional states, and you are going to draw other sinking energies, other stressful, fearful emotional states towards you. And therefore, they are actually creating your reality by manipulating your state of being. They know how this works. And if we take responsibility, as Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. However absurd, to avoid facing their own responsibility. And people just need to realize, and as we all do, that by taking responsibility for what happens to us is taking our power back. Because if we're saying someone else is responsible for what is happening to us, we are saying we are not in control of our lives, we are not in control of our reality, some external force is. And it will be if that's the way we see it. But if we say, I am responsible for what I am creating, what is it about me that's pulling this in? Why does this pain in the arse come into my life and not into his? What is it? You take responsibility, and what you're saying is, I have the power to control my reality. I've just got to take responsibility for what's happening and then realize why it's happening. And with that realization, the vibrational frequency I'm broadcasting changes, and we stop pulling that kind of thing into our lives anymore. We changed our reality. I mean, many people in this room will know that when you go through a change of state of consciousness, state of awareness, state of perception, then many people go out of your life that were in before, and other people come in. Changes happen in your life. Some of them you don't like, but what it is, it's just the old life created by the old energy field, created from the old perception, breaking down so another one can come in. And it happens because when we change, our energy changes, and therefore what it attracts changes. Our experienced reality within the decoded holographic world changes, because we are in control if only we realize that and take it back. And so instead of blaming everyone else, because while we are fighting among ourselves and blaming everyone else for what's happening to us, it's just an individual reflection or expression of the energy that leads to wars on a collective level. And it's interesting, when you start to change your perception and you want to be spiritual, as they say, what kind of goes on in your mind is, now I want to be spiritual, everything's going to change, and I'm going to go down leafy lanes with little nymphs and butterflies are going to drop on my arm, and it's going to be lovely because I'm spiritual now. And what happens? All hell often breaks loose in your life. It bloody well did in mine. And what happens then is we think, if this is spirituality, 2 years into this journey of mine, conscious journey, I thought, if this is spirituality, you can stick it. This is no fun. Because everything in my life broke down. But when we start to understand what's happening in the way that I'm talking about now, if we understand what's happening, then the pain of that breakdown can be very, very much diminished. Because what we're putting out before the change are vibrational fields that attract certain vibrational fields back, which we call a life, people, places, ways of life, experiences. When we change and shift our consciousness, there is that transitional point where the old construct, vibrational construct, starts to break down so the new one can come in. And if the old one doesn't break down, the new one can't come in. And at that time, we experience it as all hell's breaking loose in our lives. But what's actually happening is the old is crumbling so the new can be. And on a collective level, I'm more and more convinced that is what we're experiencing now. We're experiencing the breakdown of the old collective order as this vibrational change moves on, which I'll get to in a second, and we're experiencing that breaking down, and it seems as if the world's falling apart. And the Illuminati and all that think they're responsible for it. I wonder if they really are responsible for this whole breaking down of the paradigm and the construct, because what it gives us the opportunity to do is to break out of the enslavement of the old structure, the old system, and build another one, put another one in its place. And I think there's a very good chance that what we're actually witnessing in what appears to be a very frightening thing with all the breakdown and the economy and all the rest of it is actually the old collective energy construct breaking down so a new can take its place. What you fight, you become. Consciousness doesn't fight. I want to fight for peace. I want to fight for justice. Once you fight, you set up a fight with someone else and you start a conflict. Waste of time. Freedom fighters. Contradiction in terms. We don't have to fight for freedom. We just have to be free. Refuse not to be free. Refuse to have our freedom taken away. Refuse to lie to ourselves to avoid facing responsibility, that we're in control of our lives if we take that responsibility back. Instead of saying, I'm unlucky. It always happens to me. It's a nice day, you watch something come along and spoil it. All this stuff, I'm so unlucky, you watch, something will go wrong. Funnily enough, it will, because you're creating it. Life's not about luck. It's about how we perceive, and therefore what we experience by creating what we perceive. This, as I said earlier, is like a movie screen. By the time it gets here in this play-out reality of experience, it's a done deal. It's all over. There's no changing it. The only way to change it is to change the real, get to the point where this is being projected from, and that means going within to the deeper levels of self. It's what I call ceasing to comb the mirror. You know, when you're combing your hair, you don't comb the mirror, because your hair is not going to change, because the mirror is just a reflection. You've got to comb your hair, the origin, and then the mirror will reflect that. And what we're doing and what we're manipulated to do all the time is comb the mirror. To look out here for answers to things that are being generated from within here. Our state of being, our state of perception, our states of belief. It's in here that we change the decoding system that leads to the play-out experience that we call physical life. You know, for me, I read some figures recently that said something like 98% of human behavior doesn't come from the conscious mind, but originates in the subconscious mind. I would go further than that. I would say 100% of our experience in this reality comes from the subconscious mind. And the conscious mind, what we call the conscious mind, just observes the outcome. It's like watching a movie on the screen. It actually all originates within here, and that's where what we need to change. If we change our inner self, our vibrational self, we will therefore change the play-out world that we observe through the conscious mind. And we will observe something we want to experience rather than something we think we have no control over. We attract to us people, places, jobs, opportunities, lack of opportunities, money, no money. Luck, bad luck, by our state of being. We are the ones that are creating it. When we are in fear, we'll draw to us things that we fear and say, told ya, see, I'm frightened of it and it comes to me, see, I'm so unlucky. But if we can change what we put out and put out another energy, what we call love or whatever, and we can draw to us a reflection of that. Again, taking responsibility. And, I'm not being kind of, the guru on the mountain here. I've said this a bloody number of times in the last 20 years. Why me? Why me? Why not someone else? But then you say, well, why not you? And why is it you and not her or not him? And that, we take responsibility, not why me, I'm so unlucky. Why me in terms of why have I drawn this into my life? I drew many things into my life I didn't like, and then when I started to realize what I was putting out unknowingly at the time that was drawing these people in, I stopped drawing them in. And the great thing, the great energy of change for me is intent. Some people call it the will. I call it intent. If you put out intent that this is what I want to do, this is what I will do, never mind want to do, then that energy of intent will always draw to you what you need to achieve that intent. But where it falls down is often what we draw to us are things we don't like initially. I want to be spiritual. I want to be all existence and all that stuff. And then you put out that intent, and the intent says, okay, this is what you need to achieve that. And invariably at the start, in the early stages, what we need to achieve that is to break down the old construct based on our beliefs and our emotional states and our mental states and our perceptions. So we draw things into our life that we don't like, pains in the backside, things going wrong, things we don't like, and what it's doing is breaking down this old construct so the new one can emerge and you can achieve what that intent wants, which is transformation. And so many people, they put out that intent, and then what comes towards them is all this stuff, and they go, well, I'd like to transform, but not that badly. Thank you very much. And away they go to the old life. And then they'll say, you don't create your own reality because I wanted to do it and nothing happened. No. When the things came towards you to help you achieve it, you ran away because you didn't want to go through it. And intent will draw to you what you need to achieve the intent, not necessarily what you want to achieve the intent. And I have this saying from personal experience. Life gives you your greatest gifts, often brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. And I experienced that in the early 90s to the mid-90s when my world fell apart and I couldn't go anywhere in Britain, sometimes further afield, without being laughed at by most of the people. The comedian only had to say my name, no joke necessary, and the audience were laughing. I'd stop at the traffic lights, I'd look across, the family in the next car were laughing. Now, that seems a terrible thing, and in the experience of it, it wasn't pleasant. But what did it do? It cleared me of the prison that most people live in, the fear of what other people think. Because when you go through that level of ridicule, you either transform and go beyond it, or you end up in the corner shaking and it's all over. So when I look back at that, did I like experiencing it? No. When I look back, would I change it? No bloody way. Because it was a wonderful, wonderful gift. And if in the now, In the now, forget the past and the future. In the now, we can just accept some of these things and realize and get the best out of them by saying, why is this happening to me? What is there to see in this? How can I change my perception as a result of this? How can I see as I'm drawing it to me? Then you can move very quickly through these periods of transformation. There's this thing called The Secret, which is this DVD that talks about, attracting into your life what you want. I think there's some good things in it, and I think it's very simplistic in many ways. And what I would say is, if you visualize a Ferrari, and your life experience does not include having a Ferrari, then you can paper your house with Ferraris, and you can sit there and look at them forever. A Ferrari ain't going to turn up in the garage because it's not what your experience is. And there are many, many things that go into this mix of how we create reality, including what we came in to experience, which will be in the energy field that we carry through life. It will draw certain things in that lead us along the path that we decided to experience before. But the key to everything is living life and not letting life live us. Be the one. Be the one that takes responsibility for what happens to us, and in doing so, we then take control of our lives instead of our lives controlling us, which is what it does with the vast majority of the 7 billion people nearly on this planet at this time. Stage one of transformation, to realize we are a slave. To realize that is to start to see the bars in the cell that we couldn't see before. At that point, we realize there's something to address that we didn't realize before when we thought we were bloody free because we had a vote every 4 or 5 years. Once we recognize that, then we have the opportunity to choose to continue to sit in that cell or to choose freedom. And if we choose freedom, that is when we have the chance to transform our lives and go through this process of transformation by taking that intent. I will be free. I will be the full magnitude of who I am. I am not going to be a figment of a fake identity any longer of someone else's creation that tells me this is what I am. And then you go through this transformation, very well symbolized in the Matrix movie, and sometimes, like I say, it can be challenging. My God, I've been here sometimes. Sometimes not so much now, no, not now, because I've gone to another level now, but on this journey, I've gone to the top of a hill sometimes where no one could hear me because I didn't want to frighten them, and I have screamed frustration out of my body because of the challenges that I was going through and the frustration of no one listening at that time. And the frustration of my life breaking down, the old life and its effect on other people, which gave me a lot of grief sometimes, and that was a real challenge. But when you come through it, then you start to see it completely differently. You start to realize that the experiences you give others are the experiences that are their journey. And I've seen people like my children, who are unique expressions of humanity, very different, all unique, not despite what they experience because of me, but because of it. It was their challenge as well as mine, and it transformed them and gave them a sense of uniqueness that they might not have had otherwise. Opening the heart, understanding that infinite love is the only truth, everything else is illusion. There was a wonderful line that voice in the ayahuasca experience came out with, which said, if it vibrates, it's illusion. And when you go, sometimes, often fleetingly, mostly fleetingly for most people, into the space beyond vibration, everything is silent and everything is still. No vibration, because that's that place of what some people in religious writings have called the void. It's that place of all possibility where the silence is all possibility, waiting to manifest through sound and other ways into different manifestations of possibility, and where everything and nothing, everyone and no one, all the possibilities are there. And from that silence, from that stillness, comes the vibrational manifestations of individual possibilities that we call the physical world and other worlds. Everything in the vibrational realm of experience is an illusion. Just that, an experience. One manifestation of all possibility. What we are is the silence and the stillness, having that experience. This is what we are. Everything from the beginning, my birth, my ancestors, my children, my wife, everything comes together simultaneously. I saw everything about me and about everyone who was around me. I saw everything they were thinking now, what they thought then, what was happening before, what was happening now. There is no time, no sequence of events, no such thing as limitation of distance, a period of time, of place. I could be anywhere I wanted to be simultaneously. That's what we are. And the way that this computer filters reality gives us a mistaken identity, especially with the encouragement from the conspiracy and the manipulation. And we think in terms of limitation when we are all possibility. And the key thing is to know that, to know thyself, to know the full extent of who we are, and to express it without fear of the consequences. Don't think you are, mind, know you are. Consciousness. Consciousness doesn't think. That's why you go into deep states of meditation. There's silence. And the chatter stops, as it did when Jill Bolte Taylor had that experience with the hemorrhage in the left brain. It's just the decoded world of the computer reality. And when we get to that level, then the miracles can start, because we overpower the limitations of laws of physics and all these other things that relate to the mind's version of reality. And then we start to get system failure. And we are now in a situation where energetic change is fueling this awakening of humanity. And it's funny, you know, when I started out 20 years ago, and I went to see a psychic to try to see if she would pick up this presence I felt around me for month after month. It didn't tell her anything. Just told her that I had arthritis and maybe hands-on healing would work, nothing else, and then things started to happen. And she said 1990 that I was going to go out on a world stage because some being was telling her, and reveal great secrets and all that stuff, which I thought was bloody crazy. What are you talking about, woman? I present the sport on the news. But one of the key things, and why I bring that up now, that was back in 1990, in that same meeting with the psychic that was so accurate with hindsight, I was told there is going to be a spiritual revolution within his lifetime that is basically going to wake humanity up from the amnesic state that it's been in. And it's a vibrational change that is going to bring this about. And that's why the first book I ever wrote on these subjects, and I wrote it in a complete fog because I didn't know what the bloody hell was happening to my life. I called it Truth Vibrations. Came out in 1991. I wrote it in 1990. And I called it Truth Vibrations after this vibrational change that I'd been told about right at the start that was coming. Now, in 1990, there was absolutely no evidence of a vibrational change that was going to wake up humanity or any waking up of humanity. But over the last 20 years, right to the present day, and exponentially now, it's bloody obvious that something very seriously is happening all over the world to bring people to a state of consciousness from a state of unconsciousness. And the way we decode reality is changing as a result. Mind is about division. The change, consciousness, is about oneness, unity of everything. And when I said earlier that a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I went into that state and that voice was talking about the schism and all that stuff. One of the things it said in that same experience was the correction is now happening to correct the schism. Some interesting things it said, you know, all I can tell you is what it said, and people must take it or leave it, was that because everything has a self-identity or an awareness, this schism had taken on this self-identity and was resisting this correction from this vibrational change that was happening. And what I was shown as the voice was saying this was a man clinging onto a bar and some other men trying to pull him off the bar, and he was clinging tighter and tighter and tighter to hold onto the bar, symbolic of what he was saying about this correction and this schism, self-identity, resisting this change. And what it was saying was that what we're seeing in the world now, in the play-out decoded world, with this mad panic rush to impose this Orwellian state and put the lid on and microchip people and all this stuff, was the schism playing out into the decoded holographic world, this last resistance to this correction, the word it kept using, this correction, energetic correction, that was going to balance out this schism and therefore transform the decoded world as it happened. And that we were going to go back to the state of harmony. One of the things it said is, don't expect it to happen 10 minutes from now, because when the schism happened, the energetic vibrational change was so different that in the decoded world, the change was so different that there was massive geological events, symbolized by the Great Flood and all these things we were talking about earlier. So this energy, this correction is happening at the rate necessary to stop another catastrophe, as there's another energetic change from one state to another very, very quickly. But that this change was happening. Well, we can see it in the way that people are attuning to it. Now, I'm going to be at odds with a lot of people over this, I'm sure, but I should, from my experience with the truth vibrations and all that stuff, say, hey, see 2012, yeah, it all fits. I'll be honest with you, I can't sync with 2012. I can't sync with this thing that's going to just transform everything in a very short time in 2012 because of the Mayan calendar. I can't sync with it. By 2012, this correction energy will have moved on. More and more people will have woken up, because it's happening faster and faster, I can tell you, as someone that travels around a lot. But 2013, it will be further, and 2014, it will be further. I don't see, as some people do, this, I call it the spiritual Y2K 2012. And there's not a problem with people believing anything so long as we get on with it. What I'm seeing, and many other people I know are seeing who do websites and things that interact with the public, is the number of people that's saying there's no need to do anything because it's all going to be sorted in 2012. I mean, please. Okay, let's wait till 2012. Realize it ain't going to be sorted in 2012 just like that. And hey, we've lost 3 years of doing something. So, you know, I respect people, whatever people want to think about 2012. I can't sync with it. And I think to a very large extent it's a diversion if we're not careful. But is there a vibrational change? There is. And we're seeing it and people are feeling it and changing as a result of it. Now, back in 1990, yes, just after I saw that psychic, I was taken by someone who I met to see this lady who was a channeler. And, you know, this thing about channeling and all that stuff, well, it depends what you're connecting to. Because you can connect to a load of crap and then channel a load of crap, and there's a lot of that about. There's people who channel information which is just coming from their own bloody mind, you know. They're making it up. I was with a group once, and this person went into channel mode, and she was answering questions in great detail. People were saying, you know, they were kind of in awe, and they were saying, I remember one lady said, "What's my path?" You know, and this channeling lady said, "All will be revealed when the time is right." And I thought, I could do that. That's not I could do that. But every now and again, you come across something that stands the test of time. And going back right to those early days, 1990, and I was nowhere near understanding what the hell was happening to me. It kind of was years before I started to anything like understand it, really. I went to see this lady with this guy, and she started going into channel mode. And I tell you what, if people don't believe in shape-shifting, they should have been there. When this lady goes into this channel mode, her face changed, her voice changed, everything changed. And I'm new to this, I'm presenting the sport. And I'm like, bloody hell, what am I into here? This woman's just changed, like, unbelievable. And she starts channeling this information. And all these years later, nearly 20 years later, it absolutely stands the test of time. And this is what it said. The source gave the name Magnu, but it's just an energetic source of consciousness. I feel you are sensing now the energies coming in, the energies surrounding your planet. This is causing many of you to ask questions. Remember, this is 1990. It is causing many of you to reevaluate completely your way of life, where you feel you wish to go, what you want to do. It is causing tremendous upheavals. Some of these upheavals are confusing, very distressing, very disturbing. Some people in partnerships are finding they can no longer continue in those partnerships because their partners cannot tune into what they are tuning into. It is causing a great deal of disturbance. And as I have said to this sensitive on more than one occasions, that you must organize yourself into groups to support each other. Now then, my own allegiance with your planet goes back to an Atlantean period when there were many energies being used and information and knowledge being used which were for particular reasons of safety withdrawn, shall we say, to prevent complete catastrophe, to prevent total destruction of your planet. I would suggest that these energies that were withdrawn created the need to bridge the gap which we were energetically getting sustenance from before in what we call food, and the law of the wild all started coming in and all that stuff. Just my view anyway. One could say that these were sort of emergency measures, if you like, to prevent the inhabitants of this planet from an untimely destruction. Now, at that time, shall we say, this knowledge was distributed only to the few. It was taught in what one could call a temple setting, though I'm very careful about using this word. It has connotations, maybe. So let me use that word in the broadest possible sense. There were those initiated into this knowledge, there were grades of initiation, and those who passed the full initiation, they were called the guardians of the light, the keepers of the secret knowledge. This is the context from which I am coming. There came a time when this knowledge and the energies were withdrawn. It is very difficult for me to explain to you precisely what I mean by that, so I will let you mull these things over. As the energies around your planet quicken, again, this is 1990, as these latent energies, these energies which have been withdrawn, will now be phased back in. They will gradually be awakened. As the consciousness level of your planet raises itself, those of you who are working together to raise your consciousness, you will be able to hold more and more refined vibrations, and so we will be able to use you as a catalyst to feed in more and more energies. As more of you raise yourselves to meet the challenge, so we can awaken more of these energies. Now, energy is consciousness, and the energies themselves contain the knowledge and the information which is beginning to surface again in your consciousness. So many of you will remember the Atlantean times. You will remember that you communicated with, say, dolphins and whales. You understood these other sentient creatures. This is the lion and the lamb period I was talking about earlier. You could levitate. You could manifest things. You could cause spontaneous combustion by not miraculous means at all. Once you know what you're doing, these things follow. It's a matter of order. Now, I'm looking at a time on your planet when these energies, this knowledge, is reawakened and reintegrated into your consciousness. I'm not looking at a time when this knowledge will be for the few, but when your whole planet will be awakened to this understanding, which you have simply forgotten. It's not a matter of new information, it's a matter of remembering who you are and where you come from. So you're being asked to change. You are being asked to change in a total way. It is not a matter of small changes, a little thing here, a little thing there. You really are being asked to turn yourselves inside out. There is a massive shadow which must be cleared, and it is up to you, light workers as it referred to, such as yourselves, to focus yourselves on that challenge. Those of you who are in the forefront of this, you are rather like a snowplow. You are the thin end of the wedge. You really have, how shall I put this, to a certain extent, I suppose, you have the shitty end of the job. You have got to do an awful lot, but nevertheless you are capable of doing an awful lot. That is why you have chosen to come. That is why you are here, what you are here for, to really, decoded by the psychic, to really shovel some shit and therefore make some space behind you to make it easier for the others. Now, as in your human body, there are energy lines around your planet, through your planet, which correspond, I suppose, very much to the acupuncture lines and meridians in your body. Where two lines cross, you create a vortex, a tiny vortex if it's two. The more lines that intersect, the bigger the vortex. Therefore, where you have a chakra, you have a large vortex of intersecting energy. It is the same with your planet. Where most lines cross, there is the biggest vortex. Now, you could say that the plexus in and around the islands you call the British Isles is the hub of the wheel of plexuses and energies which surround your planet. It has acted in other times like a fail-safe device. In order to activate these chakric points upon your planet, the energies must pass through the central point. They must pass through the heart of the pattern. And that latter piece is one of the major, perhaps the major reasons why the Illuminati have focused so massively on the United Kingdom, Britain, the British Isles, these tiny little islands which have more standing stone circles and ancient earthworks per square mile than anywhere else in the world, particularly along the western side of the country and across the Irish Sea into Ireland, because the ancients knew where these vortex points were, and they built their stone circles and stuff on that. Another thing that seems to be happening, which I'm picking up as the months pass, is that stuff that's not reported in the mainstream media, obviously, and mainstream science, is that there are changes going on in the sun which are very different. That could well be another manifestation of this energetic change, because the ancients who focused on the sun, yes, people focused on the sun because it was warm, it was the source of warmth and growth and all the rest of it. But there's another level where the sun is not just a source of warmth. It is actually a generator of energy, knowledge, information, which we pick up as well. The sun is very, very much more than it appears to be. And so this energetic change is now happening, and it's waking more and more people up. And we've got a choice to lay back on the airbed or go on the canoe and flow with it and enjoy it, or we can try to hold it back, and we can try to hold on to our old lives and the old way of doing things and the old perceptions, in which case we're going to be using more and more energy just trying to stand still and hold on to what was, because this energy of transformation is going to change everything. And one of the things it's going to do is break up this structure, which is an energetic construct that has been put together to enslave us, and it's going to bring about, eventually, the kind of world that was here before, as this construct breaks up in the face of this correction. And we have this time to choose whether we're going to go with it or whether we're just going to try to hold on to what the life that we've had before and the perceptions we've had before. And the choice, that fork in the road, like I said earlier, is to go with the head and the mind and let that dominate our perception and decision-making, or to go with the heart and let our feelings and intuitive knowing lead us in the directions that we need to go. If we feel, I'm not telling people what to do, it's not my job, it's none of my business, but I can tell you, like I said earlier, what transformed my life is when I decided that when this and this were at odds, I was going with this. And I tell you what, it transforms your life from an existence to an amazing synchronistic series of coincidences that make life much more interesting, much more enjoyable, and much more full of vitality than just mind following the programs round and round and round and round. And like I just said earlier, you know, the breakdown of the old structure, which I'm increasingly convinced is what's happening. You know, the Illuminati and the reptilians and all this stuff, they think they're in control, but they're not really. I mean, compared with consciousness and the fuller expansion of reality, I mean, they're a fly on an elephant's back, really. And they think they're bringing many, many things about at this time, but who's controlling who? And what I think we're seeing is the breaking down of the old energetic construct, which is going to allow the new one to replace it as the correction comes in. And a lot of people are going to go through challenging times, not least economically, as we lose our attachment and obsession with things and start to live life in a different way. And there's this wonderful line from an old 60s song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And it's true. While we're attached to things, and we have something to lose because we're so attached to it, we cannot be free. The attachment stops us being free. We can have things as long as we're not attached to them. And we're not attached to the world of things never changing, because that's what it does. That's its role, constantly changing. The only thing that doesn't change is infinite love is the only truth. And we got the opportunity now to see some of the challenges that are coming in terms not of, oh, it's so terrible, but, hey, the old paradigm's breaking down. And we've got now the opportunity to go with a new one. Just when, it's an old proverb, just when the caterpillar thought life was over, it became a butterfly. And often it's just at the point where you think there's nothing else you can do, and it's all over and it's all finished. It's happened to me a few times in the last 20 years. Suddenly, you become a butterfly. You overcome it. You realize you're much greater than you thought you were, because the challenge has taken you to that point where you could make that leap. So, we're starting to wake up. What can we do practically, I guess, in the play-out world? Well, this is a good one. Stop making excuses. The human mind, because it doesn't want to change, it doesn't want consciousness to become the governor of perception. It wants to hold on to its power base, and it will make endless excuses why we should not do what is necessary to become conscious and bring mind into line. It will find endless reasons why we shouldn't do things we'd rather not do, but really we feel we need to do them, so we'll find an excuse why we can't do it. We'll find an excuse why, oh no, there's a big game on this week, so I'll wait till next week, and then I'll wait till the next week. And nothing ever changes, because we're making excuses not to change. I really want to change, honest, but not this week. And we can stop making excuses for looking the other way when basic freedoms are being taken away. And crucially, humanity, human race, can get off its bloody knees. We have been down there in so many different forms all the way through this period of slavery, and the reason overwhelmingly we've been through this period of slavery is because we found it so easy to get on our knees. We need to stop looking up at anything and start looking everything in the eye, because nothing is greater than we are, and we are no greater than anything else, because we are all in the end the same consciousness. Martin Luther King, a man cannot ride your back unless it's bent. We cannot be controlled if we get up off our knees. One of the things we can do very practically, I would not only encouraging young people to do this, but to have adults that are beyond the age of joining the military in drafts or whatever, to support those young people in every way possible who say, I am consciousness, I don't do killing anything, never mind for the people who are seeking to use that killing to enslave humanity. I will not serve in the military. Stuff your draft. I'd rather go to prison first. And I tell you, there are some fantastic young people in Israel, Israelis, who refuse to serve in the Israeli military and do what they're doing to the Palestinians. Why? Because those Israeli young people are conscious enough not to allow the mind of fear of consequences of not following the draft into the military to stop them expressing their true feelings and their true nature, which is, I will not contribute to this slaughter and injustice. Put me in jail, but you're not going to put me with a gun in my hand in front of people I have no problem and no argument with. Wonderful people are doing that in Israel. As they used to say in the 60s, if someone had a war, what would happen if no one turned up? There'd be no war. It's because we just follow what these people declare and we make the war. People fighting each other and killing each other, who left alone in a bar would probably get on great. Oh, really? Do you do that in your culture? That's interesting. You want to come to America, I'll show you around. That's what will be going on. But because we follow the manipulation through mind and fear of not following it, we go and kill people we have no argument with. The pioneers of a warless world, or the youth that refuse military service. Albert Einstein, absolutely. It's time to let go of fear. Consciousness doesn't do bloody fear. Mind does fear. We're consciousness, therefore we can choose our own journey and our own direction. We don't have to be dictated to by idiots, brain donors, in dark suits who dictate to us what we can and cannot do. Love is brilliantly polarized here with hate in this picture, and we have a choice between the two. Hate is what mind does. Love, in its true sense, is what consciousness does. That's the choice. So, rioting and fighting the system is just playing in the system's arena. It's playing on in the stadium that it dominates. What's the point in that? You know, we're not going to, and should not even consider, I would suggest, fighting the system. The system holds all the aces there. It's got all the weaponry anyway. And if we fight, we become what we're fighting. Draws us in. It's like Martin Luther King said, the limitation of riots, moral questions, society is that they cannot win. And their participants know it. But more than that, when you riot, when you fight something, you become what you're fighting. And, you know, we can protest, and we can protest, and we've protested, and we've protested. There was 1 million people on the streets of London protesting at the plan to invade Iraq. They invaded Iraq and killed so far in excess of 1 million people. There are endless protests all over the world against globalization and its injustices. Globalization gets faster. There are endless protests against world poverty, and world poverty just expands. You know, instead of protesting and then going home or going down the bar and feeling good about ourselves because we protested, we need to come together and stop cooperating with the system that is enslaving us and depends on our cooperation to survive. And I would say this, you know, divide and rule. That's how they control a mass of people. They divide and rule them along the fault lines, manufactured fault lines of religion and race and income bracket and all the rest of it, and country and whatever, and culture. And therefore they divide and rule the unity, and therefore the few can control the many, which are in a state of disunity and conflict. And let me make this point to people who think that's a good idea. This is not a conspiracy to enslave Jewish people, or Muslim people, or middle-class Americans, or Hindus, or Australians. This is a conspiracy to enslave the entire human family. Therefore, if we do not come together and in unity and mutual support behind that which affects us all, i.e. our freedoms are being taken away by the day, then let's symbolically sit in a prison cell or a concentration camp eventually, and let's sit round and argue who had the best religion, the best culture, the best race. Let's do that then. We'll have plenty of bloody time if we're still alive. We need to come together, not only in mutual support to stop cooperating with this nonsense, but also in mutual acknowledgement that we're all the same consciousness having different experiences. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. People say, oh, I don't mind him being stopped having his freedom of speech because I'm allowed to say mine. I've got freedom of speech. No, you've not. Freedom of speech is the freedom to speak your view and express your version of life. If any one person is stopped from having that freedom, then no one else has freedom of speech. They only have the freedom to stay within the parameters of what is decided they can say. While one person is not free to speak their truth, no one is. They're only free to comply with what the authorities say is acceptable to speak. That's why Keystone Cops, you can go and report back as much as you like. I don't give a shit. I'm going to say what I believe at all times and stuff your bloody letter. In the end, said Martin Luther King, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. The freedom can be taken away when people say, okay, they're having their freedoms taken away, but it doesn't affect me, so that's fine. Oh, and they're having their freedoms taken away, but I don't like them, and I don't agree with what they said anyway, so that's fine. And eventually knock on the door. We're going to take your freedoms away now. Oh, you can't take mine. Oh, yes, we can. What was that saying? Pastor Nehemiah after the Second World War in Germany. First they came for the Jews, and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists, and I was not a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And that's what's happening now. Oh, yes, let's turn attention against the Muslims. Let's turn attention against these people, and these people, and these people. Let's pick them off, and then we'll come for you. Unity is what will bring this to an end. Not looking the other way because it doesn't affect us in the moment. It will affect us eventually if we do that. And look at your children and grandchildren in the face, I say to those people, and tell them what you were doing when the fascist global police state was coming in. What were you doing, mummy and daddy, when this state took over all aspects of my life? Oh, I was watching a game show, honey. It was a good one that night. Or, in terms of people in uniform, oh, I was helping to bring it in, dear. And that's what people in uniform need to understand. They are policing in a state that also affects them and their children. People in uniform, they think they have power. They have no power. The power is in the uniform. They're just there to animate it and do its bidding because the uniform is just an extension of the state. The power of people in uniform is not in them, it's in the bloody wardrobe. That's where the power is. And when they become surplus to requirements, they will be put on the tip like everyone else, and someone else will be brought in to animate that uniform. They're just pawns in the game. And they're pawns in the game that are enslaving not only other people, they're enslaving their own families by playing a part in this. It's time to wake up and grow up and stop playing a part in the enslavement just because we think we're in uniform. These people have families, they have children, grandchildren. But what is there to fear about them? Nothing. What is there to fear about authority? Nothing. We are consciousness. All that is, has been, and ever will be. There is nothing to fear. Whatever happens, we are always that. Mind fears, because it's programmed to fear. when we're conscious, there's no fear in this. It's a shake of the head. Pathetic. 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 And we need to do this. Compliance. We need to challenge that. Not with violence, not even with aggression. We just need not to fight it. We need to walk away, because without our acquiescence, it cannot survive. You know, when you look at a pyramid, we've been manipulated to believe the power in a pyramid is at the top. It ain't. The top of the pyramid is there because the rest of the pyramid's holding it up. We're holding this whole thing together. There's a story I told many years ago of a British comedian called Larry Grayson, who died. I kind of knew him vaguely, and not closely, but vaguely. And I went to his memorial service in Covent Garden, and this other comedian did this tribute to his life in which he read out this story that Larry Grayson had told him. When they were going around the variety halls and the theaters in the 60s, they had this all-male show. And Larry Grayson was the only woman in it because he used to dress up as a woman. And he said that the end of the show, the last scene, all the sailors, all the men came on dressed as sailors, and they were singing Rule Britannia. You know, Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Oh, I'm very pleased for you. Okay. And as it built up, Larry Grayson would come on dressed as Britannia with the helmet and a shield, and he would be manhandled up the side of this pyramid to the top for the big finish. And he said one night, he said things seemed to be going rather well. He said, and then I noticed that a sailor in the bottom left-hand corner had got rather a cough. And this cough got worse and worse and worse to the point where the sailor couldn't stay in the pyramid anymore and stepped out of it. Larry Grayson, symbolic of this elite at the peak of the pyramid, ended up in the second row. And the elite, the power center, had done nothing to bring about this. One sailor, the bottom of the pyramid, had got a cough. And the whole thing collapsed. And I listened to that and I thought, my God, yes, that's it. We, the powerless people, are holding the powerful people up there, and they know that. They're terrified of us realizing that. Do you remember that movie, animated movie, A Bug's Life? A Bug's Life with the grasshoppers? And what happened was there was these ants, and Ant Island, as they called it, and these grasshoppers used to come every year and take all the food, and the ants had to spend the whole year gathering the food together for the grasshoppers because they were terrified of the grasshoppers. And there weren't many of these grasshoppers, and one day, they're in their winter quarters in a tree, these grasshoppers, and they've got all the food they need, and someone suggested among the rank and file grasshoppers that they didn't need to go to Ant Island this year, because they had all the food they needed. And then out came the leader of the grasshoppers to tell them the facts of life when the few are going to control the many. It's a wonderful speech. If you ever can see that movie, A Bug's Life, I do recommend it. And he said, basically, they outnumber us 100 to 1. And if ever they figure that out, there goes our way of life. So we have to keep the pressure on, basically. We have to keep them working, so they don't figure out where the real power is. And that's why this network of manipulation works so hard to keep us in these states. Like I said earlier, what are people leaving foreclosed homes for? Foreclosed by banks that have caused the unemployment that lead to them having to leave their homes. Stay there, refuse to leave, make it difficult for them. Expose them for what they are. We make it so easy, the non-compliance. No longer will we just do it because we're told to do it. Is it just? Is it right? Okay, I'll do it. Is it unjust? Is it not right? I ain't doing it. We start to make the decisions on what we will and will not do based on our values and not some imposition from the dark suits. These people are going to give me, grant me, or grant me not my freedom. I'm all that is. You can't grant me freedom. No one can grant me freedom. I am freedom. It's what I am. The big question, what would consciousness do? What would consciousness do in this situation? And when we ask that question, it really just changed the way we see the world. Not what would I do, mind, or frightened. What would consciousness do? You know, this is a great line. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. And what would transform this world overnight is if we started doing what we knew to be right in the situations we face instead of what we think is right for us in the moment. Not what are the consequences for me or what's the best thing for me, how do I get the best deal out of this? What is right? What is just in this situation? If we started making decisions based on that, the world would transform overnight. These are very simple things. If we want a world of peace, then we need to be peaceful. We don't need to fight for it. We just need to be peaceful, and we'll bring that about. If we want a world of kindness, we need to be kind, and then it will naturally unfold. We don't fight for kindness. As Martin Luther King said, it's a wonderful saying, piece of oratory. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But consciousness asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. And when enough of us do that, what is right will manifest by definition. And we're in this position now where this vibrational change, this energetic change is taking place, where we can start cracking these eggshells, when we can start becoming the full magnitude of who we are, where we can be consciousness in the now, using mind to experience this reality instead of being governed by it, turning the key to let consciousness in. We're being offered this opportunity now. No longer can we say we didn't realize who we are, we didn't know we could do that. I was kind of waking up one day, and I saw this earth imprisoned, and I saw this big lock and a key going in and being turned. I went on the internet just very shortly afterwards. I was looking for a picture, not this one, and that's what I saw. The picture I'd just seen in my half kind of sleep. And that's what we're being offered the chance to do now, to turn the master key called becoming conscious that will bring an end to this. It's being given to us, we just need to take it. And to take it, we need to say enough. Enough of being enslaved by these people, enough of being enslaved by our manipulated ignorance, enough of being enslaved by the fear of being who we are. Enough. It is time to fly. It is time to fly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.